This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this show is brought to you in association with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines, specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Welcome to the Late Late Show.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome along to the Late Late Show. My name's Sarah Langdon, and it is Monday, the 5th of December. How are you all doing? I hope you're all right. How have you got your Christmas trees up?
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This episode of Teachers Talk Radio has been made possible with support from Witherslack Group, the UK's leading provider of SEN education and care. They're here to support you too through an ever-growing offer of free resources, including webinars, podcasts, articles, and events aimed at supporting teaching professionals like you. Visit their website at www.witherslackgroup.co.uk to find out more. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
ITV News reports on the workload of educational psychologists in Gateshead, who say they are overwhelmed as the number of children needing special educational help has risen by 117% in 8 years. This has placed a strain on SEND services in the area, but the load has been especially large for EPs. Deborah Mason, Service Manager for SEND in Gateshead, said that there had been a wait for some people to complete their doctorate, although assistant ed psychs have been used to enhance the team. This report comes shortly after the Secretary of State for Education in England, Gillian Keegan, sent a message to the education and care sector about SEND reform. In the message, Ms Keegan said she believed that pupils and students should always be able to get a high-quality education and receive the right support. She acknowledged the challenges of a complex system, but said that her department wanted to take time to listen to children and parents, as well as those in the system, before publishing a response to the SEND and Alternative Provision Green Paper. An improvement plan would be published in the new year, she added. Part of the plan would include investing £21 million into training 400 more educational psychologists. For young people in areas like Gateshead, this funding can't come soon enough. The BBC News website reports on claims that the University of Derby has suspended a student for taking her baby into lectures. The female student is halfway through a degree, and a tutor had agreed to her taking her son to lectures as a short-term measure, but this was later overruled. As the student was breastfeeding, she felt she had no option to continue, but was suspended 2 weeks ago. The student believes she has been discriminated against because she has a baby, but stated she had never allowed her son to disrupt the learning of others. A university spokesman said areas were available on campus for those who needed to breastfeed, but that taking a baby or child into lectures was not allowed for health and safety reasons. Meanwhile, Ulster University has defended itself against claims that it plans to open a campus in Qatar and that will have a negative impact on LGBTQ rights. The university is due to open the campus in Doha in January next year. Speaking on BBC Radio Ulster, Hannah McCulloch, chair of the LGBT Society on the university's Coleraine campus, said she is worried that the university is putting financial gain over a community within their community, and that it will damage the establishment's reputation. A spokesman for the university said, Ulster University believes that education is a route for societal growth, and that many UK universities had partnerships with countries across the Middle East. In Wales, the government has announced free Welsh lessons will be extended to the entire education workforce, including non-teaching staff. Alongside this, a new framework for Welsh in English medium schools has been published, underlining how the Welsh language is integral to the new curriculum for Wales. A sabbatical course is also available for teachers to learn or improve their Welsh. Minister for Education and Welsh Language, Jeremy Miles, said, "We want everyone to enjoy using the Welsh language. We are ambitious for our language, and I am pleased to be able to extend the offer of free Welsh lessons to all school staff." Finally, in a week that saw the release of Department for Education statistics, which show a 20% drop in those entering the teaching profession, many media outlets comment on the possible impact on young people. The number of entrants to initial teacher training fell from 36,159 to 28,999 between 2021 and 22 and the 2022 to 23 training years. The government attributed the fall to the reduced number of new entrants and an increase in the target. But critics pointed out that the government's recruitment targets for secondary school teacher training has been missed in 9 out of the last 10 years. A DfE spokesperson said, "For teacher trainees in 2023, bursaries and scholarships in key subjects will be available, and we remain committed to raising the starting salary to £30,000. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, did you get a bargain on Black Friday? This week I'm going to talk about deals. First, a little bit of history. Tom will be proud of me. Reading up on Wikipedia and seriously condensing what I found, the term Black Friday refers to the Friday after Thanksgiving when the Christmas shopping season starts. Supposedly, it started in the 1950s. Recently, it marked a time of serious bargains, riots and fighting for unbelievable deals. However, are you getting a bargain or are you just led to believe it? Seeing as last Friday was Black Friday, which began last Monday, and next week will still be Black Friday, or for some stores Cyber Monday or Cyber Week, when you get the best deals online, how do you know a price drop is actually a deal? Well, the short answer is you don't. I have a couple of pointers here that may help you, but the underlying advice is buyer beware. If I go with the best known online retailer, when using Amazon, there's a nifty little price tracking website called Camel. This will show you the price data for a product over the time it's been advertised. You can see when it was more expensive and less expensive. If you're on your phone, where most shopping takes place, hit the share icon found next to the product image, go to Camel and paste it into the search box. You can even sign up to email alerts for price drops and add target discount alerts if you're not in a desperate hurry for an item. The next trick is to simply do a web search for the product. You may find it cheaper in a large supermarket store, and although you may need to go and collect it to save on postage, it may be worth the journey. There's also hundreds of coupon and price comparison sites where you may be able to find further discounts. The only caveat being the time you spend researching may actually outweigh the saving you make. I return to my initial warning. Buyer beware. I hope you get a deal leading up to the holiday season. As always, I'd love to hear your favourite shopping online tips. Let us know at TTR 2022. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome along to Teachers Talk Radio. This is the Late Late Show. First of all, thank you so much to Tom and his guests, Khalil and Daisy, for their show. I've been listening this evening. It's just been amazing, and I've been watching it kind of unfold on Twitter as well. And I must just mention one of the tweets that came in, quote of the night from Daisy: "You can't assessment your way out of a curriculum problem." Isn't that just everybody's absolute favourite way to just sum that up? I absolutely loved it. I loved it. This evening's show is focusing all on teaching abroad. That is my topic this week, and I am actually really super excited because I have 2 guests with me tonight. Now, my 2 guests this evening are Debbie Bryden and Michelle McLeod. I'm really excited to have them because not only are they incredible teachers who are going to be sharing their fantastic experiences of teaching abroad with us this evening, but they are also two colleagues of mine who I worked with when I very first started teaching, when I was just a baby teacher, and they became great friends, and I've been really lucky to stay in touch with them, and I kind of feel like that's really wonderful, bearing in mind that we are now talking about this tonight. So let me welcome Debbie and Michelle. Ladies, are you there?
Hi, yeah, I'm here. It's Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Thank you. How are you?
All right. Apologies. I told you there'd be tech issues on my end as well, didn't I? What was really funny was when we were preparing for the show tonight earlier in the week, Debbie and Michelle and I, we had a little video call about it, and we were like, oh my God, everything's going to be fine. We're going to talk for ages. We're going to have so much to say, but what if the tech doesn't work? So it's good that it didn't work for me rather than you guys having issues. It's absolutely fine. So who would like to start? Because both of you have got very different experiences and journeys of teaching abroad. So do you know what, Debbie, I'll come to you first. First of all, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Okay, so currently I'm teaching at a secondary school in Northampton. I'm teaching criminology, psychology, and sociology.
Excellent stuff. And when was it that you first had the opportunity to teach in a different country?
It was 2013. So I think things have changed a little bit and they have moved on. So I guess the experiences I'm going to talk about are ones that were 9 years ago.
Right. Okay. That's cool. That's cool. Where was it that you went?
I went to Ghana in Africa. And it was amazing. And yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting about it with you guys.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on as well. Michelle, what about you? What is it that you're doing at the moment? And where was it that you travelled to and when? That sounded like Blind Date, didn't it?
Well, tell me where you're from.
What's your name and where do you come from?
Currently working for a medical pupil referral unit. So it's called Hospital and Outreach Education. And it's students that are all too poorly with either mental or physical illness to actually attend mainstream. So I'm teaching GCSE art and design at the moment. And I went to China, and that was in 2016. So yeah, quite different.
Yes, I remember that because that's when we were teaching together. I remember you going to China, and I remember you coming back with some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. Wow. Okay. So, what was it that made you can decide between you who wants to go first with this one? What was it that made you choose where you went? Was there something that really intrigued you about teaching in that specific place, or was it that someone came to you and said, look, we've got this opportunity, this is what you're going to be doing out there? What do you think?
For me, it was like a bid to tender, I suppose. They said that there was an opportunity for art lecturers across the UK to bid for a place to go and teach the Chinese teachers how we deliver the art curriculum in the UK.
Right.
So it was actually quite a big process. It was like an interview. We had to write a submission proposal, do lesson plans, a scheme of work, explain what the resources would be. And it was quite a big process. It was almost like you were trying to sell yourself to say why you think you would be a good person for them to pay for you to go over and actually teach their teachers. So it was quite a long process, but I did think what an amazing opportunity it would be. And China was on my bucket list, so...
Oh, wow, what a great choice then.
That'd be great, yeah. So
Michelle, could I just ask you just to turn your microphone up just a little bit for us? We've just had someone say that they can't really hear you that well.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me a bit better now.
That's a little bit better where I am. I hope that's okay. Thank you, HB History, for letting us know.
Yeah, so it was quite a long process to go through, but like I say, China was on my bucket list, and I thought that opportunity, especially because they paid for everything for me to go over, just an amazing opportunity for me.
How long were you there for?
It was actually just over 2 weeks, so it doesn't seem very long, but the days there were very long, which I know we'll talk about at some point.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, it was very intensive, but absolutely amazing.
Yeah. What about you, Debbie? How did you get the opportunity to go to Ghana?
So basically mine was very different from Michelle because mine was not organised at all. I sat there, I think, over Christmas after a pretty tough year, and I thought, you know what, I really miss doing something out of the box, you know. I'd done the working in Camp America, I'd done the gap year in Australia, and I was thinking, oh, is this life now just sort of work every day and then home. So I thought, you know what, there must be something out there that I can do as a teacher in the school holidays. So I was sitting at my mum's house and I was like looking really late. I stayed up all night and I was just finding all these websites.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I found this one about like low cost volunteering opportunities. It had teaching on the list. And I was like, wow, there are so many placements. And I just remember looking through them all and kind of shortening my list, like, you know, what areas of the world would I like to go to? And I think the reason I chose Ghana is because it's somewhere that you probably wouldn't just go for a holiday.
Very
So
true.
it was somewhere that I probably would never go again. And it just looked, you know, just wow. So I did a bit of research. I found out that obviously their first, well, not the first language, but they do speak English as one of their main languages.
Right.
And it was relatively politically stable. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go for it. So I sent them an email and then they're like, sure, come along. And I was like, okay, do I need to do anything? Do I need to fill in any paperwork? They're like, no, just get a visa and book your flights. And I was thinking, oh, this
Oh my
doesn't sound very
gosh, it's like
organised.
Kate Winslet in The Holiday.
It was a bit impulsive, shall we say,
Yeah.
but I don't regret a minute of it.
It sounds like a fantastic adventure from what we've been talking about kind of leading up to this evening. What were your first impressions when you arrived? Because obviously it was a very spontaneous kind of arrival, if you like.
It was indeed, and actually, I landed. And I emailed the day before saying, "Well, I'm arriving tomorrow. Is someone going to be there, or how does this work?" And they said, "Don't worry, someone will pick you up at the airport." So okay, so
Right.
I remember landing and just sort of looking around, like, "Wow, this is so alien to me. This is such a different culture." And I was looking around for someone with my name, or but nothing. So I just kind of wandered around a little bit, and an hour later, I saw a guy holding up my name on a sign, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is good."
Oh, thank goodness.
So yeah, I mean, it's just typical Ghanaian time, they're very, very laid back generally. So yeah, as soon as I saw Jamal there to pick me up, I was very relieved, and off on my way to the house where we'd all be staying to do our teaching, or other people were doing medical placements and stuff like that.
I see. So it wasn't that you were there by yourself. There were kind of a group kind of inducted into different sections, areas, etc.
Exactly. So I wasn't
Yeah.
there by myself at all. Obviously, I'd applied by myself and gone by myself. But straight away, there were, so many other people from all over the world, and they were just amazing. It was just wonderful.
Oh my goodness, that really sounds wonderful, and you've literally only just arrived. I can't wait to find out more. Michelle, what was it like when you arrived in China? I assume it was a lot more structured because it had been organised as kind of like an arranged transfer to teach over there.
I had hoped it would be.
Ah,
So I was assured that everybody in Shanghai speaks English or can speak English. So when I arrived, that wasn't the case. And I had sort of what they called like translations of different phrases. So I had it in English, and then the Chinese version was written above it, so I could find which phrase I wanted and try and point to the question or whatever it was and ask somebody. But nobody would even look at the sheet. They were too scared because they thought I was going to try and talk to them, and they didn't know how to speak English. So
oh
it was a bit of a
gosh.
shock to the system, trying to find my way around. And also it was -8 degrees when we got there. And it was the coldest
Sorry,
winter.
-8.
Yeah.
When did you go? When was
in
it?
January.
Oh right, okay.
But it was one of the coldest winters I'd had in a very long time. So
Right.
it was a bit of a nightmare. But when I eventually got to Suzhou, which is where the training centre was,
Yeah.
I arrived at the hotel, and I'd been travelling for about 36 hours altogether.
Right.
And I thought, right, I just need a bath. And literally the hotel phone rang and said, "We're coming to pick you up in 20 minutes because they're going to host a dinner for you." And it was so lovely that they were going to do that. But at the same time, I thought, I really just want to go to bed.
Oh bless.
But they were so hospitable that they knew I'd travelled. And so they'd put on a big sort of feast for me arriving.
That is
Lovely.
something that China are actually renowned for, isn't it? Is it true? Oh, just to go off topic a little bit because that's what I do. Is it true that when you have a meal, if you completely clear your plate, they think they haven't given you enough and they refill it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Is that
They
true?
would be,
Oh
they'd
my
be
goodness.
horrified if they thought they hadn't fed
Really?
you enough. Yeah, very, very hospitable, and want to make sure that you're well fed, well looked after. that you can't come home with any bad stories. I think, they really want to make sure that you do come home
Sort of made to feel welcome.
Yeah.
So was that the same when you first went into the classroom with the students then?
The students were fantastic, but I think that's more a cultural thing in that they were very respectful with no sort of arguments back. I'm trying to be diplomatic here. Thinking, sort of the general issues that we might have with teenagers, for example. It's not like that at all because they're in education. They go to education to learn. So they sit down, they be quiet.
So they were FE students, effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I see. Debbie, your environment was very different because obviously you were working with, you were volunteering with younger children in Ghana. So can you describe their typical school day to us? What was their kind of like start when they got there? Was it exactly the same as, registration, straight into lessons, or was it, incredibly different to that?
It was incredibly different. Now, the reason I chose the younger ones is because I teach obviously A levels. So it was very much like, you know what, I'm going to do something completely out of my comfort zone. And I remember getting there on my first day, and the teacher just said, "This is going to be your class, and I need to go and get my little boy some malaria medicine, so you can teach now." And I was just like, "Oh, right." And there's all these small children just looking at me, sitting in rows, and I'm thinking, I've got not a clue what I'm going to do. It was just absolute panic. It's very unstructured, unlike what it sounds like Michelle was doing. It was very much do what you want, it's fine. There's not really a plan here. So yeah, there was that moment of panic, and then I just started sort of looking at what they've been doing. They've been writing poems and just like basic addition
lovely.
and stuff like that. So I just kind of got stuck in, really.
How many did you have in the class, and what age were they?
They were between 4 and 6. It was classed as preschool, I believe.
Right. Okay.
So they were, really quite young. And I think they were at that age where some of them really appreciated this educational opportunity that they were getting, but others were too young to really appreciate it. Whereas I also did actually teach in the evenings down at the fishing village, and they were sort of older. They were 10 to 13, and they literally hung on every word, and there was just this buzz every time you spoke. Every time they spoke, they just had their hands up saying, "Madame, please, madame, pick me," whereas the littlies, they were, some of them appreciated it and some didn't, so a bit of a mix.
What was the length of the school day?
Well, do you know what? I honestly can't answer that because I was just doing mornings, because in the afternoon
Really?
I was
Okay.
I was at the orphanage working with some kids there,
Right.
similar sort of stuff, but not formal teaching. So I was just doing until midday.
Wow, you embraced the teaching abroad, didn't you?
Well, just sort of throw myself in, keep busy.
How wonderful. Oh my goodness, that sounds fantastic. So this question is to both of you. What are the biggest differences that you would say between the country that you were in compared to the UK? I'll let you two chat this one out.
In terms of education or just in general?
Yeah. Well, in sort of culturally. So was there like a massive culture shock going into a different country, having to do things in a specific way, but then also navigate your way through teaching as well?
I think because where I went, it was a non-Westernized town, so there was absolutely no English written translations anywhere. So I had to have an interpreter with me.
The language barrier was probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, massive language barrier issue. However, I was able to use a map and go out walking and, go and explore things by myself. But I was quite surprised when I got lost and I couldn't sort of navigate my way around the subway. And I went to ask a police officer a question, and they all shouted at me because apparently you're not allowed to approach police officers in China. And I didn't know that.
How are you meant to know that?
I
wouldn't know that.
No.
Oh my goodness.
I thought normally we'd go to the police if we needed help, but
an angry policeman shouting at you in Chinese.
And regards to in the classroom, it was just very much, they're so respectful and they are keen and want to learn. And when you said about how long the days are, their school days are absolutely horrendous compared to here. They start as early as 7 or 8 in the morning, and then they would be in school until maybe 6 p.m. But they'd also all be expected to learn a musical instrument and do Saturday school. So they only had Sundays off.
Wow.
So, and it was a very long day. So even in the mornings, I found this quite strange, is that they would have for their breakfast what we would have as an evening meal. So they would have full on like massive meals of soup and dumplings and chow mein and, lots of meat and vegetables. And they would be eating this in the morning. And I'd sit there with my cereal.
I just got visions of you with your Cheerios.
Yeah, literally. And they're all sat there eating like these full main meals. And but it was just because it keeps them going until later.
Well, I'm not surprised if they're starting school at 7 or 8 in the morning and they're not finishing till 6 at night, and then they've got to do a Saturday learning a musical instrument.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd be eating that 3 meals a day.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine our kids having to do those hours?
This is what
Genuinely
I say to ours all the time. When they moan about something, I'm like, well, just be grateful you're in the UK.
Let's go to China, shall we?
Definitely.
Oh gosh, what about you, Debbie?
So the biggest culture shock for me was just the fact that people were everywhere all the time. And I'm one of these people that at the end of the day, I like to kind of have that time to decompress, but you did not get a minute because everyone was just so friendly. They were like the warmest, most hospitable people, but of course they wanted to talk, and there was just people everywhere all the time, out on the streets at nights. They don't tend to, I guess, well, the people in the town I was living in, they didn't spend really time in their homes because their homes are quite basic, I guess. So they just sleep there really. So they were out on the streets, just sort of sitting, chatting with neighbours, cooking out on the street. So there's just so many people. That was the biggest thing I noticed about the culture, but also that how grown up the children were in many ways. So in the UK,
even the littlies that are like 4 or 6.
Yes and no. I'd say more so when they get to sort of 6, 7, 8. There just didn't really seem to be this big divide between adults and children like there are in the UK.
Right.
So, for example, one day the school flooded in the playground. There was sort of rain everywhere, and the older children were just kind of getting brooms together made out of bundles of branches and twigs, and they were just sweeping the water out of the playground without being asked. They just kind of pitched in and helped because they knew that's what would be a good thing to do.
That's amazing. I don't even think I would have figured out to do that.
Yeah, I don't think I would either. I think I stood there watching them like, oh, wow, they're really switched on, aren't they?
That is actually ingenious. That is actually ingenious. Oh, my goodness. So relationships with the staff and the students when you were over there was good. You were kind of made to feel inclusively part of the kind of teaching team, if you like, and you developed relationships with the kids that you were working with at the time that you were there. Yes,
absolutely. My interpreter was she was amazing. Her name was Xiao, and she ended up sort of taking me under her wing, and in the evenings she would collect me in an Uber, and we would go to different places, like to coffee shops and things. Her English was fantastic. So she was just absolutely lovely, really helped me see what the culture was like, and took me to some sort of ancient streets that were part of the sort of protected areas and things. And I saw some actual, I suppose I'm going to say real China, no touristy parts, it was off-beaten track, only where locals could go because, you can't understand the language basically. And
obviously not everywhere could be touristy. I mean, there are areas, people just live and do life and that.
Oh, lots of people stopped and took photos of me because they were so surprised to see. Somebody shouted white. They just shouted white at me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm like the palest person in the
world. Literally, so. Yeah.
But I was short enough to fit in with everybody, so that was brilliant.
Oh, bless you. That's adorable.
Yeah, but no, they would be quite shocked to see me, and people would stop their cars and stare.
Because they weren't used to having like tourists, etc., in those specific areas that you were visiting.
Yeah,
that's actually really lovely and kind of an intimate visit into kind of that side of the culture that you were teaching in, and to be able to. Yeah, to be able to kind of see that side of those students that you were meeting and understand more about where they came from and why they learned the way they did.
The students would bring in traditional snacks and things for me to try. Now, I like my food.
I do. Let's go. Come on. Do you know what? I've actually got on my plan for this evening that I wrote. Where is it? There's a piece of paper here. And I've got a list of all really nicely organised bullet points. And then just in capital letters, underlined twice, next to Michelle is food.
Food. I've got some food stories. Yeah.
Just don't talk about the fish in the bowl.
No. But they were really they really wanted us to me to embrace their culture and try it and take part in it. So they would bring in traditional snacks and different teas to try, and it was just amazing. It was lovely that they all wanted me to sort of have all these experiences.
Yeah. Do you know what I love about that? The fact that just completely backs up the fact that when you're a teacher, you never stop learning.
Oh, absolutely.
Doesn't it? I mean, how
100%.
fantastic is that? And the experiences that you learn and the things that you tried and found out and explored while you were there, you then brought them home with you and then were able to put all of that experience into what you were then doing here, which will bring us on to what we're going to talk about in a little bit. Oh my goodness, Debbie. What was the food like in Ghana? No, in all seriousness.
The food?
The food. We're not going to talk about the food. Was the food in Ghana?
Well, at the time I was vegetarian, so it was a bit
Oh,
tricky.
okay.
It was a bit tricky. But yeah, I did actually find that they don't have cheese anywhere, so I couldn't find cheese.
Oh, I
But
can't go there then.
Bounty bars. I could find Bounty bars and Bourbon biscuits. They were like the two things I could find in like really
That's
random
amazing.
shops. So I always had a stash of those. And apart from that, it was just things like the bread was always sweet bread. They never had like savory bread. So it was sweet bread. We had, eggs, rice, beans, stuff like that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome.
And I've forgotten what the original question was. So
I can't even remember either because we're just doing what we always do when the three of us are actually having a chat, aren't we?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is I am going to take a short break for the news and for this week's 2-minute tech. But first of all, I just must mention our other sponsor for this week's show, which is the Witherslack Group, a leading provider of specialist education and care. They need people like you to help them achieve even more. With Slack, you'll be given all the resources and support you need, offered a clear path to career progression, and rewarded with some of the best salaries and benefits the industry has to offer. Check out their vacancies at witherslackgroup.co.uk. So we're sponsored by the Witherslack Group tonight, and we're also sponsored by John Catt Educational. You can check out the johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles. Debbie and Michelle are still with us. We are talking about teaching abroad this evening, and we have covered loads of things from kind of the lead up to how they came to teach abroad in a specific place, what made them choose that location or where they were taken in that location, and talking about a typical school day and the biggest differences between that country and teaching UK with kind of things like culture shocks and things. So let's come back and talk some more, and I can guarantee you halfway through an answer the news is just going to randomly start playing, so we'll go with it. Ladies, how did the places that you taught in deal with things like students with learning disabilities, for example?
That was something I was quite aware of because my background was with special needs. So I'm always very hyper aware that those sort of things are put in place. And when I got there, I said, what happens with students that have any learning difficulties or disabilities? And it was basically shh, we don't talk about that. And I was like,
really?
Yeah. I was like, what do you mean? So the way it was told to me was that they would have specialist schools, but that they don't really have the integration into mainstream. So for us, we would very much try and have all students integrated into mainstream classes, but just put special provisions in place. For them, it was that they just wouldn't have that. So all the students that were in their class were all doing the same work at the same time, and therefore they wouldn't have the capability to support somebody with learning difficulties in their classes.
Really? Was that even to sort of those with dyslexia and things like that?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I can't.
It does kind of feel like you sink or swim.
Well, exactly. It is, isn't it? And did you come across many students that were struggling at all, or that were sort of you kind of saw that they could have benefited from some additional support?
No, because everybody I met was talented, and it was again very bizarre in that we every year our different cohorts, we obviously have massive divisions between the levels of ability, and everybody there was able to do everything that I was asking them to do, in the sense of the way that they did their drawing or how they use different media. And it's like, I think they've learnt it from such a young age, and they've all been shown the same things, that they were all able to do it, if that makes sense. So each year they're told how to do certain things. So in one of their classes, they would be in rows and rows and rows of students, but they would all be doing paper cutting, or they would all be doing observational drawing, for example. And it was very much kind of on rote. It was, this is what we're doing, and then we're moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
There wasn't any of that differentiation like we have.
Right. Did you feel in any way that, obviously being aware of that when you were in the classroom with the students, and kind of reflectively afterwards, do you feel that in any way you kind of didn't necessarily get the full teaching experience that you would have potentially liked out there, and the opportunities to be able to stretch and challenge the teachers in the way that those that potentially had difficulties were able to access the arts?
I think it was more that they wouldn't want to admit if they were struggling.
I see.
So everybody is able to do it, and that, I don't know how to say it without sounding mean. Like, it's almost like they wouldn't want to come across as being the weak link, you know,
Right.
Because they were all very conscientious and wanted to do the work. Or, you know, they all sat down and got their heads down and got on with it. So
Yeah.
it's really strange. It was, you know, nice, but at the same time, I was encouraging them to be themselves and try and show a bit of personality and, you know, try something a bit different.
Did you see some students develop personalities a little bit more with you whilst you were working with them?
Oh, God, yeah. It was amazing. By the end, they'd asked the translator how to say certain things and how to write things. And a few of them wrote me a letter, and they said that they loved me. They said that they will take on board what I taught them, and that they will start implementing some of the ideas that I'd given them in their classes, and that they were so inspired to try these new things that they'd never even heard of before.
Yeah.
Which were all very generic British art teaching things. So to me, it was all just things that anybody that we know that's in an art career would say, oh yeah, that's normal. You know, they just didn't.
Can you
have
give us a
that.
for instance?
So one of the lessons I did was we got vegetables and we did printmaking with vegetables. So cutting, I don't know, an onion in half and then covering it in paint and then doing printmaking with it. But then where that print was, I then drew a figure, and the print of the half an onion ended up being the bottom of a skirt. So I designed like a fashion figure with an outfit from an onion. And
That
they were
sounds
just
incredible.
like, this is crazy.
Did that like blow them away?
Yeah.
If they were working with paper and then to come in with vegetables.
Yeah, exactly. They were looking at me like I was crazy. Like, why has she got vegetables?
Oh, fantastic! Though I
Yeah,
love
loved
that. That's
It was
fantastic.
nice.
That's brilliant. What about you, Debbie?
Oh, the learning difficulty thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't really think it was recognised at all. I have
Okay.
one little boy in mind. His name was Alfred, and I think he was maybe 4 or 5. Now, bear in mind that a lot of the other 4 or 5 year olds could read and write, and he just absolutely couldn't.
Bless him.
So I know, and he was so, I guess, fidgety, couldn't sit still in his seat. But all that happened was that they just caned him a lot. So they'd rip a bit of like the palm tree off and make kind of a cane from it, and they would just walk around like slapping him on the arms
Oh my
every time he
goodness.
misbehaved or spoke or did anything that they didn't want him to do. I remember the teacher telling me that, you know, she was going to make sure he passed his exam at the end of the year because she didn't want him in her class anymore, because he was lazy and good for nothing.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was a little bit heartbreaking because he was just adorable.
Wow. Sorry, I'm just dealing with that.
Mm,
That's
sad.
mad. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
My goodness. So yeah, so it in a similar thing, it wasn't recognised, but they were kind of I don't even know what word to use, chastised for it, I suppose. Whereas
I guess, but it was just that, I think, one teacher, because the rest of them, they were just like, oh, it's just Alfred. And it was just one teacher that just really seemed to have it in for him. I think she just had it in her head he was a really naughty child.
right.
So,
Oh my goodness me. So I checked on the socials before I came live tonight, and we had loads of sort of I've been sharing all week that both of you are coming on with me tonight, and I've had quite a lot of comments that I do want to share with you, and a couple of them are questions that I know you're going to be able to answer. One of them is would you go back?
Okay, you want me to take this
It's
one
very
first?
very simple question.
Yeah.
Would you go back to the same place that you went before?
I
And
would.
do you think that they are still or have utilised the things that you implemented when you were there?
Okay, so I would go back in a heartbeat. I feel like for me, 3 weeks wasn't long enough.
Yeah,
However, I knew that it was just something that I was doing in the summer holidays. I would love to do it longer term. Now is not the time, I have a house and a dog and stuff. So, but in the future, I
bless.
would
Yeah,
definitely go back to exactly the same place. I don't really feel like, I set the world on fire when I was there. It was very much a case of they're understaffed. I'm there. I can do some teaching, but I didn't really have a chance, I guess, to implement anything new because it was just sort of taking over the reins for a few weeks.
yeah, yeah. What about you, Michelle?
I think for me it's a little bit different in that it was lovely. I felt like I did inspire them, and I would love to go back and just see if they were able to put those different things in place in their classes. However, from a personal point of view, if I was going to go back, I'd love to go to a different part of China to experience the culture in a different part, because I know each of the different provinces is very different. So I think if I was going to go all the way back to China, I'd probably like to go to Beijing or somewhere. So it's kind of half and half. I'd love to see the people there that I saw previously,
Yeah,
to see if they were able to make those differences in the classes, because it's very prescribed what they learn. The government
that's a great
chooses
way of
their
describing
curriculum.
it.
So yeah, so it's very, yeah, they kind of be told what to do, and I feel like I really ruffled up some feathers in a good way. So I'd love
In a
to see
good
if,
way,
yeah,
absolutely.
definitely. I'd love to see.
Absolutely. That's really interesting, actually. And one thing I did want to ask you, Michelle, because I did notice on my little list of, I can see people that have been listening this evening, one of whom is the lady who I interviewed 2 weeks ago called Rupinder, who is the lead of creative arts at Sandhurst College. And I was going to, she was basically, we talked for an hour about the importance of the creative arts for opportunities, be it personally, in work, in life, the doors that it just opens generally. And I just wondered, like you said, they're very prescribed with their education over there. What do they believe that the arts are there for? What is their kind of direction for students going into the arts in China?
I think it
Just
is.
for Rupinder's benefit.
Yeah, I think it is all just based on talent and whether they would be good enough to use that art as an actual career.
I see.
So they, yeah, they're basically all taught the same thing at the same time. So each of the students would be working on the same project, doing the same technique, using the same media and processes. And if they were absolutely fantastic at it, then that's great. And they are all striving to be the best at it. So I think from the point of view of who's the best at it, rather than it being from a therapeutic point of view, for example, which is sort of where I come from, really. I think it's an amazing way to express yourself and sort of relax as well. I like to
Yeah,
find ways that the students can use it in their own time as well. So it's,
absolutely.
yeah, very, very different.
It's so different, so different. It's almost like a complete polar opposite of teaching in the
It
UK,
is,
isn't it? And one
yeah.
of the things I wrote down off the back of our chats is the opposite to, I literally wrote opposite to the UK, parents trust in teachers in other countries. And I think that was one of your quotes, Michelle, actually, that I wrote down.
Yeah, because it feels like one of the biggest things about teaching abroad was that the students were all very respectful, and
Yeah,
that I didn't ever get the impression that if you had an issue with a student that it would come back on you necessarily. So in the UK, it's obviously very different to what it was 20 years ago, that if a parent got a phone call home from the school, the student would be in a lot of trouble. But nowadays we have a lot of issues with the parents as a teacher,
yeah,
in that if we say that something's happened with the student, the parent would say, well, what are you going to do about it? And it's coming back on us again. So it
yeah,
was really nice to know that basically that they had your back, that they knew that the students were there to be well behaved, and that they weren't going to misbehave because they would get in trouble themselves.
yeah,
So yeah, it is.
absolutely. Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. That's a really interesting point. Debbie, how did your experience teaching in Ghana influence the kind of teacher you are today? Because obviously it was such a different setting and such a different experience to teaching FE students and A level. But what did you take away from it as a teacher as kind of the most positive part of the experience?
I think in terms of teaching, very honestly, not much, because as I said, it
Okay,
was a totally different age group, and it was very
that's what I
much
mean.
just
Yeah.
pitching in. However, I think I took away, I guess, a change of attitude and a change of mindset. So a few things really. Firstly, it made me realise like how lucky we are in the UK, because the
Yeah.
school I was at, the whole school was literally like the size of a sports hall. There's a playground in the
The
middle. It
whole
had like four
school.
kind of, yeah, like the whole school with just four huts dotted around it and the playground in the middle.
Blimey.
Um,
Okay.
so there was like kind of no walls on either side of the hut, so you could like see the next class. They didn't have any materials, I guess. You know, you couldn't do some art and crafts with them. They didn't have any glue sticks or anything like that. They literally just had their exercise books. They didn't have textbooks, and maybe that's because they were the smaller ones. And I think as they get older, they would have some sort of textbooks. But
Yeah.
we didn't really have anything. It was very much like a chalkboard and their exercise books and a pen. That was it. So it made me realize, I guess, how lucky we are in the UK, even to the point where, you know, we have sort of security at school. You know, the doors lock at the end of the night, but you know, this school, it had broken bottles stuck into the top of the walls all around the perimeter to stop people climbing over, to stop people like burgling it at night time. So that just made me realize, I guess,
Blimey.
the level of poverty, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I took that away from it. And also for me, because I'm quite, I guess, regimented, I would say, person in terms of my planning, and I'm very meticulous about, you know, have I got everything
Yes.
done in advance? Kind of throwing me in the deep end was, for me, it made me, I guess, a bit more looser in terms of how I go about things. It made me a bit more laid back, and I guess not so stressy.
Did you find that quite uncomfortable initially?
I
Kind of
certainly
that
did.
lack of structure, going, oh my God, this isn't how I do it. Where's my spreadsheet?
I did. And at one point, I remember sitting there and I was thinking, I've got the most terrible singing voice, by the way. And I was singing with the
Are
kids.
you going to
And, you
sing
know,
for us?
just no, I am not.
Oh, go on.
I don't want to torment all your listeners. So,
I love
yeah,
it.
I remember doing that. And I was just thinking, what am I doing? I never ever thought I'd be doing this. But in a way, I was just like, wow, this is so different and so out of my comfort zone and something I'm never going to do again. But I did it and I
Definitely.
can do it. And it made me have belief in myself. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. One question that came in from a friend of mine called Mark. He says, if there was no specific kind of direct curriculum, what was the assessment and process and tracking process with students, or was it kind of a bit of a free for all? That's to both
So,
of you, by the way.
okay. So, where I was, as I said, I was with the Littlies, as I keep saying.
Yeah.
It appeared very much like there wasn't. I mean, the teachers did take the exercise books home, and I know that because there was a couple of times half the students didn't have them because the teacher had them and the teacher was off sick that day. So I know for a fact their work was being marked, etc. They do have an end of year exam, as I said, to progress up to the next class,
Okay.
but I'm not sure they tracked the same way we would in terms of, you know, target grades, etc. I don't think they'd have the target grades. It was very much like, are you meeting the bare minimum? Yes, if so, you can pass. If not, then, you know, you won't move on to the next year.
Right. So what was the progression in that kind of educational environment? They went from year to year. What was the kind of the transition from kind of that age group to the older age group going into what would be secondary school year 7, I suppose, and beyond? What was their kind of journey?
Well, because I only was there for a short time and I only work with the 4 to 6 year olds, I'm not entirely sure.
You don't kind of, yeah, so that's the thing. You don't know where they kind of would have gone next.
No, I
Oh
believe
gosh.
that the classes, you know, you stay in that sort of primary school and you
Yes.
just move up to the next class with the other teacher. That's what I was led to believe.
Okay, so yeah, so the structure is relatively the same, but with kind of a freedom of learning for the teacher in there, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
In
All right.
Canada, they were expected to stay in education until they're 23.
Really?
Yeah, so it was expected that they would go on to university and basically do a master's straight after.
Right. So wow. Okay. So they went GCSE into further education / A levels, and then university and a master's.
Yeah.
What? Right. Okay.
And so
And that was
that was kind of expected.
Goodness, no pressure. My goodness. Right. Okay. We are coming towards the end of the interrogation, ladies. Do not worry. A really nice question to sort of get ready to come to the end, because I've got some lovely messages to read out with regards to kind of, we're going to come to the end point of why we're talking about teaching abroad today. What was your overall happiest moment of your experience teaching in a different country?
That's a hard one, isn't it? Because there were so many good bits.
Yeah, so many. But what would be kind of your biggest highlight? If someone said, pick a moment in that 2-3 weeks you were there, that's the thing that you will never forget.
I absolutely love learning about other cultures. So I've been very lucky to travel to lots of countries, and I think it was an amazing opportunity to be in that culture and really sort of submerged, getting to experience it with my translator. But I think I've got a photo of it, actually. There was a presentation that the students did at the end, and it was to basically feed back everything that I taught them in that time, to see if it had been taken on board, really. And
Right.
They had drawn lots of things from that whole week. And it was beautiful, because obviously a drawing can be seen by anybody without needing to translate it.
Yeah.
And they had written, "We love you, Michelle."
Oh
Just
gosh,
beautiful. I
don't.
just really felt like I'd made a difference.
That's
And,
really beautiful.
they
Like a
all gave
memory
me
board
hugs, and
kind of thing.
it was, yeah. It was really lovely.
That's really wonderful, because that's such a wonderful experience for you and such a lovely memory for you. But it also shows of what a fabulous impact that you had on their lives, and the fact that they're going to remember you as well, which is just
I like to
wonderful.
hope so.
Oh, how lovely. Oh gosh, Debbie,
So for me,
please tell me Alfred was okay.
yeah, he was fine. He was a
Good,
pretty resilient
excellent.
little guy. So for me, I think I was thinking about this earlier because I had a feeling you'd ask something like this. And one memory that stands out was taking all the students to a trip. I thought we're
Okay.
going to the beach. It got a bit confusing. We're going to somewhere called like Crocrabite Beach, and I was thinking, oh, we're taking the students to the beach for the day. We were not. It was the name
Excellent.
of the town. They were opening up a new school there,
Oh,
so we sort of took all the kids there, and our students, little, I didn't know this because it was the older ones in our school. They'd actually prepared a dance for everyone in the village, and just watching them, I felt so, I know, proud, I guess, even though they weren't my particular class. I was just like, wow, this is my kids from my school, and they're doing this dance to all the villagers, and they can dance. They are amazing. And I just stood there like,
yeah.
oh, this is fantastic. It was just that heartwarming moment.
That sounds wonderful. That's really beautiful. And they shared that with you as well, for, in the same way that Michelle impacted so positively on her students. It was the same, they wanted to show that to you as well, because of the time that you'd spent with them. That's so beautiful. I really love that. So the kind of crux of the show is this. Do you think every teacher should teach abroad at least once? Now, some of the responses I've had in, I'm going to read them to you. I've picked three specifically that I'm going to share with you. Jess from EYFS has put, yes, everyone should. You just might not go home. And Helen, who is an ESOL teacher, put, no, everyone shouldn't teach abroad. It's such a different system. It's an entirely different system. But everyone should broaden their horizons by travelling it if they can. Mark, who's a geography teacher, has said, I'd love to, but with kids the ages they are and parents aging quicker than I'd like, it will remain a what if for now. However, I'd love to teach in Sweden, Iceland, New Zealand or Canada, and would happily live in any of those places as well. Would you ever consider moving to one of those places that you taught in because you fell in love with the country?
I think it would be very difficult, I think, because of exactly what he said about the aging parents and your children, that sort of thing. I think ideally it would be something you would do prior to settling down, because you would have to up and move your whole family, and that must be very difficult. But I do think the opportunity to try teaching in a different country is amazing and that everybody should do it if they can. I do understand it's a very
So
different
yes.
system, but yes, I think it's just such an amazing experience and a chance to really also be so grateful for what we have and sort of the way that we run things. Yeah, just definitely everyone should do it if they can.
Yeah. If there was a place that you could go to, if you were given the opportunity to go and teach abroad again, but not in China, Michelle, where would you go?
That's a difficult one. I've never thought about that. I think I'd love to go to somewhere like Norway or Sweden because I understand that the early years side of it is very different in that they don't really have a education like we do, which is sort of written and spelling and all of that sort of stuff. It's more to do with actually building them up as people, and I think that would be very, very interesting.
A really significant way of learning as opposed to academically learning to pass certain assessments.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
It's about life skills.
Yeah. Did you hear Daisy's amazing quote on Tom's show earlier? You can't assessment your way out of a curriculum problem. How amazing is that quote? That needs to go on. That's going on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Debbie?
So I think everyone should if they have the opportunity. And often people think it's, oh, I have to give up a year of my life or whatever. I have to, completely change things. But you don't. I mean, I did it in my summer holidays. Obviously, that's not the case for everyone if they have kids.
Do you think that's what prevents a lot of people from doing it?
I think so, yeah. But I mean, if you're single or if you have a supportive partner that wouldn't mind you going on a 2-3 week holiday, even, maybe just go somewhere really random that, isn't just a beach holiday and just try something different because it does change the way you think and it does make you see the world in a totally different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you had the opportunity to go and teach abroad again that wasn't Ghana, I know you've spent some time in America as well, but where would you go out of choice?
Anywhere in Europe. I probably would go to somewhere like Poland because I've been learning Polish. I'm not very good at it though, so don't ask me to speak any.
You've got to either speak Polish or sing. You need to make a decision.
No, I think we'll pass on both of those. Thank you. So yeah, I probably would go for Poland just because I really like it and I've been there a few times. But anywhere in Europe, really.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, do you know what, ladies? I've had the best evening hanging out with you tonight on the radio talking about teaching abroad. I do have one more question, which isn't actually about teaching abroad. I've kind of made a decision after I did a show with one of Teacher Talk Radio's other amazing presenters called Shaniqua a few weeks ago before I started doing the Late Late Show. And one of her things, she has a thing where she asks a specific question at the end of her show. I was like, I'm going to nick that, but not the same question. So I sent it to you earlier, so you have had a little bit of time to think about it. Is there a specific teacher that you had when you were growing up? Not that necessarily inspired you to be a teacher, but that kind of got you through and made you think, do you know what? I'm going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine.
Me again. Sorry, Debbie. I don't stop talking.
I think we just let you go first now, Michelle.
I've got two. So
Go on.
One was our history teacher. And I just felt like he always made the lessons interesting. He made up rhymes to make us learn who had, discovered penicillin even, whatever it was everything he did. He just made it interesting. So we really looked forward to his lessons. And the other one was our textiles teacher. And she inspired me to go on to do a fashion degree and end up teaching fashion and textiles before I did my GCSE art stuff. So she really inspired me into what career I've done, actually.
So you're creative to the bones right from the start. Oh, lovely. And it sounds like your history teacher was very creative as well, putting like rhymes and things into lessons. Mr. Harvey. Oh, hello, Mr. Harvey. I hope you're listening. What about you, Debbie? Who was your inspirational teacher?
So obviously I had the really lovely teachers that everyone likes and that you really warm to. So a few names would be, Miss Ray, my RS teacher, Anita Sawyer from my college teaching me psychology, and Mr. Ing, he was one of my absolute favourites growing up. But I think the one that inspired, I know, Mr. Ing, it's great, isn't it? The one that inspired me the most, though, was a lady called Anne Fazy, and she was my sociology teacher. Okay. And the reason for that was that she challenged everything I said and she made me think about life in a totally different way. So she was the first person I'd ever heard about that was going on protests and stuff on the weekend. And I was like, well, what is this? Protest? Why would we be protesting? At that age, I took everything for granted that, society was good, the government was good. And she, I guess, opened my eyes and made me realise that there's a lot of stuff out there that people need to stand up for.
She sounds like a fabulous lady.
She is awesome.
Yeah, she sounds really, really wicked. Debbie and Michelle, thank you so much for joining me this evening on Teachers Talk Radio. It's been so great. Thank you for coming. Would you consider at some point in the future coming back on to have a chat about something else? So I think we could do like a whole series, quite frankly.
Yes, probably.
But do you know what? I'll have figured the tech out next time.
I was going to say, and if you can mute me yourself, maybe.
No, I didn't. I wasn't bothered about muting you. I was more worried about the news unmuting, to be honest with you. But there we are. We'll figure it out. It's absolutely fine. Thank you so much, ladies.
No,
Thank you. It's lovely to catch up with you both again.
Lovely to catch up. We'll have coffee and cake soon.
We will. Bye.
Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye. That was Debbie Bryden and Michelle McLeod, my guests this evening on the Late Late Show, talking about teaching abroad. And I feel like we could have carried on for another hour and a half, quite frankly. I am back with you on the 19th of December, just before Christmas, before we finish for Christmas. And I have to tell you, I am super excited about the guest I have on with me that evening. I'm so excited. I'm going to tell you about them now. Their name is Steph Levy, and they have just been crowned as Pearson's FE Lecturer of the Year. They were presented with the award on BBC's The One Show, and I am going to be talking to Steph on the 19th of December. Join me again then at 9 p.m.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.